Welcome to Season 3 of the Dance Reel podcast. I'm Kate Histon. Before we dive into this episode, I would love a favour from you. To help us bring some wonderful guests to our show and grow, please subscribe or follow this channel, like, comment and share with a friend. That would be a great help. Thank you so much. This episode was sponsored by Master Dancer Mindset. Know yourself, be yourself and express yourself on and off the stage. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by a spectacular trio, Kari Brunson, Josh Bell and Rachel Coates, all ex-professional dancers, now in the field of mental wellness for dancers. If you have a budding ballerina or dancer in your house or in your studio, this is a wonderful episode to watch. Welcome, Rachel, Josh and Kari. It's so exciting to have you on my podcast today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
So you are all ex-professional dancers and you're now specializing in the field of mental wellness, which is so exciting because it is such a need in our industry. I would like to know a little bit about your journey as a dancer and what drew you to work now in mental health. Josh, can we start with you?
Absolutely. I am originally from Texas, and I left there when I was 16 to study at the School of American Ballet in New York. I actually met Kari there and was in New York for 3 years, and then moved to Seattle, Washington to join Pacific Northwest Ballet. And I danced with PMB for 10 years. And, my experience was sort of like you just push through and you just do all of the things that are asked of you. Don't question it. Just be a good employee, a good dancer, all of the above. And, I thought that I was okay in that. And reflecting back, I got injured quite early. At SAB, I had a stress fracture. At PMB, I tore my labrum. And so I'm just thinking, well, my body is not made for dance. And now I'm realizing my body was holding a lot of tension, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, because I didn't necessarily know how to talk about things. I didn't know how to show my emotions. And so it manifested physically for me. Well, then I retired, quotes, from PMB and went back to school for interior design for a year. And I hated that. But I got the opportunity to go back to dance and then went to Kansas City Ballet for 2 more years, which is where I met Rachel. And I think it was having that time off that really solidified kind of my understanding of the full body experience of a dancer, mentally, physically, emotionally, all of the above. And it was sort of that noticing of, I didn't have the same confidence things when I was not in the studio. I was not judging my body so harshly. There was a lot of stuff that just came like flooding back in when I got back into the studio at Kansas City Ballet. And that's when I was like, wait a second, there's something here. And then I started paying attention around me, and there were other dancers that were experiencing similar things. And so that's really when I was like, all right, I think there's something to kind of acknowledging mental health and acknowledging the lack of support that I had experienced. And so that's what sort of led me into this path now. And there's so much more I'll share as we get to know everyone else.
Thank you. And Kari, can you tell me about your journey?
I'm from North Carolina, Virginia area and moved away from home at the very ripe age of 14 and danced at the School of American Ballet for 3 years, which I met Josh in line for registration. I so vividly remember meeting him, and then moved to Seattle. Also, recruited out here to dance with the Pacific Northwest Ballet. And my dance career, I've always seen it sort of split. I had the first half of it was where Kent and Francia Russell were the directors of the ballet. And then my teacher from the School of American Ballet came in 2005 to be the director, Peter Bowl. And I had a huge, major transition of my career. I was, with Kent and Francia, I was seen as this young child. And then when Peter came, it was like, oh, I see some potential in this person. And so it was this big, huge shift for me in my career, and getting many more opportunities. And, that level of pressure was simultaneously wonderful. And also it wasn't like a slow progression of whatever success, if you will. And I just saw my own mental health kind of unraveling during that process of just trying to keep up with my colleagues, and a really dear friend of mine who just seemed to be able to eat all that she wanted to and didn't seem to change her body at all. And so I sort of did a lot of mental struggle in the body image area while I danced. And while I was dancing, I had a food blog, and I ended up getting an injury, worked at a restaurant over the summer, and very swiftly retired to pursue food, which then led me to, like dancer to food. Ironic, given that I had some like body image issues, which led to me moving into entrepreneurship, which then led me to some burnout. And ultimately, why I got into the mental health piece of my career is trying to figure out this lineage of perfectionism and rigidity that sort of met like not knowing who I was, and this becoming of a person after being in the studio with so much perfectionism and rigidity, and like being told who you were, and then finally being, wait, who am I? So
Wow.
that's been sort of my desire to help others in the mental health world. And I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm a psychospiritual leadership coach, but I'm working with people to unblock those exact same thought processes.
And you've got your lived experience, which is valuable, so valuable. Yeah, helping
Yeah.
people. Thank you. And what about you, Rachel? How's your journey led to where you are now?
Yeah, so I grew up in Miami, Florida, and did various summer programs, had a traineeship in Nashville Ballet, spent a year at Boston Ballet after that, and landed my first contract at Kansas City Ballet. And I spent most of my career there in that company. And it was split in some ways as well. It was like really largely positive. Like I'm very, very, very grateful for my career. It was such a high point in life. And also, looking back, I struggled, and most of it was alone. I had like a lot of dancers, perfectionist tendencies. I was really self-critical. My sense of worth would kind of wax and wane depending on how my career was doing, how I felt like I was being perceived. And so there was kind of that struggle that was, maybe it was observable in some ways, but a lot of it was just kind of behind the curtain. It felt like it was just me. And that was like the burden. It was like, you have to figure this out. You have to be good enough. It's like your job to make this happen. And so that was just alongside the really beautiful points as well. I started doing my undergrad college classes like pretty early on in my career, and was just started with like one or two, and then it started to build. And so I kind of always had that parallel of like dancing and school, and was oriented towards psychology. And so I would start to learn little bits about human behavior, and then or read like a spiritual development book, and then start to reflect on my experience and what was happening in the studio. Josh and I often talk about this, how like the studio was our little experimentation box. It's like we did the same thing day after day after day. And so you really got to see the patterns like play out, like in ourselves, but also like with all the dancers around us. And so it was just kind of a natural progression from there. I had a pretty good idea by the time I was finishing my career that I wanted to move towards becoming a therapist. I also had a kind of a pivotal time where I left the ballet company, but I didn't feel like I was done with dancing. And so I did kind of like freelance, both like with contemporary stuff and some ballet things, and also with a circ type company that did a lot of traveling. And I had more fun with dance than I ever knew was possible. And part of that was my age, and just like having had a lot of experiences. And that's when I also learned how to use self-compassion while I was dancing and have a totally different outcome than when I was just really entrenched in that self-critical thought.
That's powerful. Thank you for sharing your stories. They are so moving, and your stories combined have helped create Who Wants to Share, what your platform is.
Sure, I'm happy to. So the three of us are the founders of the Illumin Collective, and we laugh to ourselves that 3 dancers, 1 coach, and 2 therapists have now sort of created a technology company. But it is a mental health platform that is all app-based. So it is made by former dancers, us, specifically for dancers of all types. On the platform, you have access to courses. There are 3 that which are our founding courses: Performance Ready, Essential Self, and Inner Resilience. We will also have guided meditations. We'll have pep talks on performance anxiety, body image, self-criticism, auditions, confidence, motivation. We also are offering, in addition to the platform, one-on-one coaching with us. 3 people who have a very long history collectively in dance that are here as a safe space to basically give the current dancer what we desperately wish that we had, which is just someone that knows and understands and can support.
That sounds wonderful. And what do you find are the most current mental health struggles with the young dancers of today?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Kind of similar to what I was speaking to earlier in my own experience. I think all dancers experience like a flavor of how do we cope with the fact that dance has these super high standards, high expectations, and our challenge is figuring out how we can meet that. And I think most dancers have some level of perfectionism that they deal with. And one way to think about that is having very high standards. So like internalizing those standards of ballet or dance for yourself, having really high standards that you're supposed to meet, and then being very self-critical to kind of help you reach that. And so being really harsh with yourself. And I think that this is kind of the basis of what the mental and the inner environment can be like. And so from there, some folks will really fixate on their bodies, and there'll be body image and disordered eating challenges. Or a lot of dancers feel a lot of anxiety, whether it's just anxiety of like, where do I stand? Am I good enough? Really overanalyzing all the little details. Performance anxiety. I know I experienced a lot of that. And then they're just like the life arcs and changes of a dancer. We all experience disappointment. Every single one of us experiences disappointment. When things don't go well, when shows don't go well, when we don't get the part that we want, when things kind of feel like they're falling apart, or career transitions, things like that. And so there's so many things that are specific to dancers. So it's like all of that, and then also trying to be a human alongside of it.
Yep. I know for me, I used to gaslight myself, like vulnerability is weakness and maybe I'm the problem. And sometimes for dancers, I'm finding that they're also receiving a fair amount of teaching from systems that really do need to evolve as well. So how would you work with a dancer if you found that maybe their actual environment isn't right?
This really reminds me of sort of the ways that we want to work with disappointment, which is acknowledging that, right, it's not a perfect system and it is evolving. And we have seen in the past 5 years, really, some changes. And we've also seen some things that are moving quite slowly. And being on the outside, personally, I have a different perspective. And I can observe in a different way than maybe someone who is in the studio on a daily basis. So I think it's acknowledging context and acknowledging that these things are there. And I don't think that dancers are alone in what they're experiencing. And so this whole idea of self-compassion, or what we're talking about, inner resilience, being able to know that being a dancer does come with a lot of challenges. It does come with a lot of things like external forces that feel like they maybe are just like flying at you at these fast speeds. And so for me personally, I always thought, oh, I am the weak one, right? So kind of speaking to your point about vulnerability, like I don't want to show up too vulnerably. I don't want to show too many emotions. I don't want to show disappointment. And so being able to actually talk with dancers about all the facets of what disappointment can even mean, and also recognizing that we each experience that as dancers, but also people, that opens up the conversation quite a bit, just to sort of let the guard down so we can then have the conversations about, so what do we do in these difficult moments? And looking at mindset and looking at what is in our control versus just giving it all away to the person in the front of the room. And again, that's not something that's happening consciously always. It's built into the structure, like you're saying. But once there's insight around what's happening, then there can be these moments of like, oh, wait a second. I do want to take care of myself in a different way. I can step away and actually take a breath or take a sip of water, and then I can come back. And so I always talk about it kind of change from the top and kind of from the bottom, that sort of sandwich approach. So we're looking at acknowledging the culture as it is, working with artistic directors, administration, to try and create a system that is more equitable, is more open to people, not just a dancer as a robot. I will use my experience where I said at the beginning, I just did what I was told. So it's being able to recognize that, but it's also empowering dancers to use their voice, to actually know what they need in their body, for their body, and also recognizing that everyone loves this art form. So we're all kind of working for the same common thing, which is these excellent performances. However, I don't think anyone has to be sacrificed in that.
So in my experience, I didn't feel comfortable to even open up to a peer and talk about how I felt, because it would mean I'm no good, I'm not good enough. And that was the frame I had in my head. And so I wasn't opening up, talking about these things. And that's my fear is for the younger ones, that they're not having these conversations, not even with their parents, because there's these high expectations on them. And then the parents have invested a lot of time, a lot of money. The parents are trying their best. The teachers are teaching the class. There's no ill intention, but the pressure of a looming career. And I know something for me, that's what I can relate to. I couldn't even vocalize how terrified I felt because I was way too ashamed. Kari, you mentioned perfectionism before. How did that play out for you in your experience? And what tips do you have to now assist dancers through issues they may have of perfectionism?
Well, how it showed up for me is just so many limiting beliefs and never feeling like I was good enough, right? Like, I have a memory from my own childhood of receiving straight A's, and I was so excited. And I went to my dad and I was like, Dad, I got straight A's. And he's like, next time A plus. That like essence right there is how I felt about dance as well, which is like, oh, triple, next time 4, or like rewatching a video after a performance and just like picking apart the one little like slip that probably nobody saw, but I did. And then it completely changed my brain chemistry. And then I was like self-doubt the whole time, the rest of the show. So that was very much my experience, just like limiting beliefs and having no skills or tools of abundance or mindset. You were just talking about dancers, right? And we have like this, there's like the physical performance, and then there's also like this expectation of like the mental performance as well, like working hard, not being vulnerable, right? Like I see those two things as like sort of in juxtaposition of each other. But then there's no room, you have a physical therapist that's like working on a knee or working on an ankle, but there's no one that's like working on mindset. The only mindset is just like, just do it, or like suck it up, or, just like make it happen. Right. So that's the mindset. It feels very like linear and like one dimensional. And then on top of that, like there's obviously so many more layers within mindset. But then on top of that, there is the like emotional therapy part of it, which is so huge for mindset and the whole thing. So, as a dancer myself, when thinking about perfectionism, it was so one dimensional to me. It was on, off, right, wrong, black, white, like slipped in a performance, the worst performance ever. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe, for me as like a second cast person, maybe I only got the one chance, right? And then therefore like the stakes and the pressure are even higher because it's just your one shot. It's the one moment to prove yourself. So for working through perfectionism in this way, it's what is that gray area feel like? What does it feel like to not have the rigid boundaried edge or, like I said, the right or wrong? And having that sort of nuance of like, okay, yes, I slipped. And these are the things that did well, like really sitting in the and versus it's all bad, baby out with the bathwater. That's how so much of it felt like for me, and not almost like seeing, not in this toxic positivity way or like any sort of spiritual bypass, but of just like, oh, well, this was the good part about it. But having that, like being able to see those two things to be kind to oneself, right?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And Rachel, when you were in a professional company or even as a therapist now working with professionals in companies, what problems do you find that they still have? Because I'm noticing the pre-professionals look up to the professionals like they've got it all together. Like you arrive and then everything's fine. This is one of the biggest myths I'm finding about the pre-professional life. So is there anything you can enlighten us on the real problems that do happen for professionals on how you've helped professionals with their mental health?
Yeah, everything that we've described, we see with professionals. There are, as you continue dancing, there are a lot of things that, some dancers might figure out pretty well for themselves. But by and large, all of the things, the perfectionism, the anxiety, the hard time with self-worth, the just feeling like you're walking like a razor's edge all the time, it's still there in professionals. And one of the big pieces that I've really worked on folks with would be self-compassion of this idea like that we can't be like critical and compassionate with ourselves at the same time. And so trying to find a way, like as a dancer, I felt like I was always kind of at war with myself. It was just like it's this weird dynamic. It's like where you want to do well, you want to do well. And if you don't do well, then you're really hard on yourself and you're like kind of fighting against yourself. And I feel like a lot of dancers experience that. A big piece that I see and I think we all see as being really important is how can you start to be nicer to yourself? How can you start to be kinder to yourself? What happens when you're able to soften a bit? And even that softening, like Josh spoke earlier about, he felt that hardness in his body. It's like it's on so many levels. It's like both like mentally being kinder, being more generous, but also what things start to shift in your body when you're not holding that like high level rigidity and kind of that inner fight. And so yeah, I think this work is just really relevant across the board.
What I also see a lot of is this ability to find a dancer's voice and sift through kind of the messages that are being, again, like I said, sometimes flying at you externally, and then being able to say, like, wait a second, where am I in this? Like, I have found dancers really able to kind of come up with creative ways to interact. So I'm thinking of conversations, right? Around casting, conversations around just like partnering or whatever's going on. When a dancer is feeling more grounded and more secure in their own ability, their own worth. And I think what Rachel's saying about self-compassion is a really great tool as well in this. It just feels like such a shift from focusing only on like external motivation to kind of making that U-turn and bringing it back to this place of empowerment. Our tagline is finding your inner light. Inner light, inner voice, interchangeable.
Beautiful. Kari, on season 2, we had Dr. Stephanie Podrick. She's a doctor, dance nutritionist, and she's done some amazing work in Europe, and she spoke quite honestly about some of the issues that young dancers are facing and dancers in companies and the pressure that dancers are still having from directors on maintaining a certain body weight and body image. And how do you offer support for dancers navigating these issues?
The experience that I had as a dancer is, again, it goes back to this black and white mentality, right? Like good food and bad food, going away to summer courses, being influenced by others and being like, oh, like this person isn't eating this thing, I'm not going to eat this thing, right? And then that, just perpetuating. I lived in a dormitory, right? And so I wasn't even really with a parent to guide me through what nourishment looks like as a woman going through puberty and having an increased performance need as far as like what the body needs, right? Going from, my school in Virginia, having one class a day and then rehearsals, to the School of American Ballet where I'd have 3 classes a day. And then once we had workshop, we'd have rehearsals, right? That's a whole different need for, caloric abundance in the body. And so I just felt like, again, back to that piece, and same thing with mental health, so alone. It was like you were just left on this island to survive with no skills or tools. And, there was like nutrition at the School of American Ballet, but it was, I think about it. So my mother was a former physician, and she told me that you have like 2 hours of nutrition in medical school. And it feels very similar in the dance world, where it's like nutrition isn't a part of this like trifecta of like nutrition and then mental health and physical health, right? Like those 3 things in a lot of ways make up, these like step stools of a dancer, right? Like how to nourish oneself, how to have like the mental, strength, and then how to have the physical strength. And those 3 things, that's what an athlete needs. I'm sure there's many other pieces to this as well. There's an expectation of the physical piece and just go, 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 do. And there isn't like, okay, and then how to nourish one's like emotional self, and then how to nourish one's physical self to make it all happen.
Yeah.
So I just felt lost almost my entire career. And I think about some of the things I ate in my early 20s, thinking that I was trying to nourish my body. And I look back now as somebody who has a pretty extensive culinary career, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what would my life and my career have looked like with this abundance of knowledge of not only the nutritional aspect of what it was for training, but also the emotional nourishment as well. So no regrets, but one like further reason to have passionately co-founded this, what it is that we're doing.
And there'd be so many dancers out there just feeling that, oh, wow, someone's speaking for me. Like that's
Yes.
why speaking about your experience is very powerful. Josh, is there anything you wanted to add on that?
What I didn't mention is eating disorders were a big part of my own personal experience as well. And I also didn't say that my transition from dance into social work, I actually worked in eating disorders facilities, so higher level of care. And so it is a really personal concern just because I lived it. And then I also recognize that the career, in a way, promotes, not always, but this emphasis on aesthetic and body. I mean, we are using our bodies to literally show the art. And so there are a lot of different ways to kind of acknowledge and look at these body image challenges. So one of the big things that has happened at PMB was hiring a consulting dietitian. So I also didn't mention I'm a consulting therapist at PMB. So I work in the school, I work in the company as well, in addition to Illumin. So, yeah, we came up with a protocol that really kind of outlines like we're taking this seriously, just like a physical injury. So spraining an ankle, an eating disorder. And again, I'm not making any assumptions about anyone listening, but I'm just speaking that an eating disorder is a psychological injury. And so being able to treat it as though we would treat a sprained ankle is really important. So when I am working with dancers, the biggest thing that I am really promoting is body trust and learning how to find a relationship with our bodies. The way we look is made up 60 to 80% from genetics. So there's a lot of external noise. I'm going back to that place, right? That's saying you can change your body by doing X, Y, Z, which is not the full story. And so being able to actually, again, create context for why do we feel like we need to look a certain way? And that's because what are the pictures that we're being put up on the studio wall or on social media, or what is being promoted as this sort of like standard. And so then back to perfectionism, there's the expectation that everyone must reach this standard, and sometimes, I will speak from my experience, it becomes skewed. We lose sight of what actually that looks like, more importantly what it feels like. So I also talk a lot about stigma and being able to sort of just look at like, where do these beliefs come from? And it's not about having the like idea, oh, this is a perfect dancer body. It's about, what do I do with that information? And how do I create more space to be able to look at all of the variables? Which means, in order to be a professional dancer, there needs to be a level of strength. There needs to be a level of energy availability. There needs to be all of these factors. It's not just about what the body looks like. So being able to expand that. And again, when I am treating body image challenges all the way to eating disorders, it is very nuanced. I mean, each of my clients slash dancers, it is a different way of kind of finding healing and finding relationship with body. But I think it first starts with actually being able to check in and kind of build that relationship, friendship, whatever you want to say, because often these challenges around body are a response to some of the pressure or some of the challenges to perform at such a high level as an athlete.
What about the supporters? What about the system and the framework? Rachel, do you have advice for parents that might be listening, or studio owners that have a full-time training? What are the signs if a student's struggling? How can we help them immediately?
Speaking of parents, I started to think about that and like, how would I respond to a parent, a dance parent, if they were my client? Like if I was a therapist and they were my client. And I think what my heart was really opening to is what a dedication it is on the parents' part. Like how much of your time and your energy and your devotion and your care goes into caring for your young dancer and helping them succeed and achieve all of the things that they're wanting to do. Um, and I just really feel for that and see what a big part of life that is, and probably overlooked in the sense of what the amount of devotion that really takes. And I can say with certainty that what a young dancer needs the most from their parents is just like unflinching, unconditional love and support. Anytime when I've ever heard of a dancer receiving any kind of feedback or criticism or any sort of things where the parents are giving opinions about the child's dancing that is not just like largely positive and glowing, it hurts, it cuts, it doesn't land as well. And so I think that what dancers need just the most from parents is just that total love and support. And then at the same time, I think parents also need their own support as well. I only can imagine this part because it hasn't been my lived experience, but how much of our own identities maybe just get so wrapped in with our young dancer. And that's really a good place to notice maybe when we're blending a bit with our child, or when we're kind of allowing their struggles and successes to be our struggles and successes. Like those are some good things to notice when pulling back a little bit and letting the experience be your child's experience is really helpful. And parents just need their own support too. Yeah, their own places where they can speak to what it's like to be a dance parent. Beyond that, in terms of like how you can interact with your young dancers or developing dancers, building a dialogue of not just like how did dance go today, as in like what did you do well, what did you not do well, but any kind of casual questions like, how are you feeling today, where's your energy level at, are you over it, are you loving it, like what do you need, what would feel so good for your body today. what part of your body needs a little attention? Would it feel good to go home and take a bath? Thinking about like the overall human, your dancer child, and how to kind of just like best nourish and help them meet their needs, and developing that like safety where it feels okay to just where it's just normalized, where your dancer can talk freely about like what their experience is.
So, social media, how do you feel that that might be impacting on the mental health of the dancer?
Yes, so there's a lot of research, not just about dancers, right? But just about adolescents, children, adults that show that social media has changed even the way our brain works. And so if I think about my upbringing and I did not have social media, I did not have the same access to seeing all of these different uploads or these different stories of the perfect pirouette or the perfect step, right? It's all very curated to show this one side, which it doesn't sometimes show the other side, which we've talked about. Being a human means there are going to be mistakes, there are going to be disappointment. And so sometimes it creates the illusion of like, this is the standard, this is the only way. And so there doesn't give a lot of space to kind of look at the reality of everything going on. I think there are some Instagram accounts. I don't have any other social media, but there are some accounts that are showing some of the real things that are happening. So I think being able to couple that with kind of the product piece is so important. Again, though, I was just reading an article about a college in the United States that just for this one specific class, they asked for all devices, all telephones to be put away. And I know this is not what you're saying with social media, but it was fascinating. They were allowed to write with a stylus. But what this teacher was noticing in the end, they got the most positive reviews from these students. And this professor had been teaching the same class for decades. But because they had put away their stuff and became engaged in the learning, they were writing the notes, right? They were being able to start processing in this way that's so different than just like putting on this product. It really showed a different level of learning, a different level of engagement, a different level of connection. So while social media is great for connection, right? I mean, we're connecting here, in completely different countries through technology. There has to also be just the acknowledgement of this is one thing that's being showcased and what's the full picture.
And for me, I see a little too much of the comparison with why can't I do my leg like that? This is trending. This has gone viral. I want to be able to do that too.
Well, right. And that's what I was even saying with like growing up and my experience. We're already doing that in the studio when we're seeing people in real time. Now there's an additional layer of like, wait a second, I'm not good enough. And then there's nowhere to really process that because it's kind of this one-way channel, if you will. There's not the like exchange of, oh yeah, the comparison is there. And remember all of the things that you're bringing to the table. Like, I wish there was an automatic response kind of just reminding dancers about that.
And speaking of what we're bringing to the table, dancers in a professional company, as you mentioned right at the beginning, when you're in the company about being, say, a good employee, what do you recommend for dancers that are listening that are in a company now if they're not feeling like it's a right fit, like that process of speaking up? What does that look like and how would they go about that?
What immediately came to mind is actually even acknowledging that it's not working. Because again, in my own experience, I'm like, wait a second, this is my problem. I'm the only one that's not able to feel equipped or to measure up. So this must be a personal weakness. So I think even being able to say, actually, this company may not be working for me, or, this is not an okay partnership, or, like things are not okay. And I always talk about having perspective. Like going to Kansas City Ballet was one of the best things that I ever did because I was able to then expand what I knew for the past 10 years. It was just this one way. And so being able to even just acknowledge like, okay, I can have a conversation with my director or my rehearsal director or with my partner even. And so, working with dancers now, that's been a huge part is, well, how do you actually get in touch with what you're looking for? Because sometimes there's the like, this is not working, but I don't even know what I want to do, or I don't even know what would be a different option. So being able to kind of even bring that dimension into the conversation, all of a sudden you see this creativity coming out in dancers. Oh, well, I know exactly what I need to do. I actually need more rehearsal time. Or actually, I need to like be able to touch my partner like twice a week instead of 1 week not even having a rehearsal and then we're going to be performing the next week. Or also recognizing that dancers are responsible for their career. I know that artistic directors are sort of the stewards or like shepherding the career, but at the end of the day, the dancer's the one that's on stage. The dancer's the one that's doing it. So being able to just understand that you might not get everything that you want, or it may not look the exact way that you envision it, but it doesn't mean that you can't collaborate, you can't connect, you can't just actually open up and have a conversation and see what's there, right? Like coming together and collaborating, that's another word that I often use is collaboration. Bring what you are looking for, and then also see how that could work in the atmosphere, in the environment.
And Rachel, many dancers tie their identity to their art form. What helps dancers build a sense of self-worth beyond their achievements and beyond their roles on the stage?
That's such an important question. I think there's so many facets to it. Like one is as your time and schedule allows to pursue other passions. Like as Josh was just speaking to, like this idea of like asking yourself, what do I want? What do I like? What makes me feel like the most like me? I think it's really healthy when dancers invest their own time and their energy in thinking about what else they like to do, what else makes them feel more like themselves, create more of an enduring sense of self-worth that is not just dependent upon how your dancing is going. It's like these like the waves come and go, the highlights and the challenges, they come and go. Life is challenge and ease. And it's like, how can we really work on finding that piece of you that is worthy, regardless of like how things are going in your dance career? And so I think that's a big part of it. And so much can blossom from there. It's like when we really start to get in touch, just like Josh was speaking to, when we really start to get in touch with that self-worth, then we can kind of ask these questions. What do I want? What do I like? We might start to notice if the environment is unhealthy and you're not, maybe you don't want to be a part of that anymore, or you want to start a conversation about like what other options could be. But we're so passionate about what can happen when dancers really start to know their own value. What magic can happen when dancers are dancing from a place of wholeness.
And we have a course literally called Essential Self that just highlights so much. And Kate, I have to say, you just are asking the most wonderful questions. Like I'm so appreciative of, just your lens.
Lived it as well. Lived the pain of the performance worth and the self-worth being enmeshed in unhealthy ways. And untangling that is a challenging but rewarding process, isn't it? And preventative, like it'd be great for anyone listening out there, even if they're not feeling challenged with their mental health as a dancer at the moment, preventative. So that's really great what you guys are offering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Final question. If you could give one piece of mental health advice to dancers, what's one little takeaway people listening can receive?
I don't want this to sound cliche, but literally,
Cliché's fine.
you are not alone. If you are thinking of something or you are feeling a certain way, your teacher in the front of the room has probably experienced or felt that. Or the person standing next to you at bar, right, is going through something. So many times we think that we are the only ones that are struggling. And it doesn't even have to be a struggle. It could just be like, oh my gosh, this is the first day that we're in this new environment. Then you look around and you're like, well, actually, this is the first day for everyone to be in this new environment working with this new choreographer. So you are not alone.
And Rachel, what about you?
Yeah, what's coming to mind right now is you deserve to enjoy your dancing. So often that's on the back burner. We're so pulled into whether we're doing well enough, whether, where we're standing, like all of this kind of like trying to be better, trying to be better, trying to be better. And my advice or my thought would be, what happens if we reorient to ourselves and ask ourselves, like, what makes us happy? What do I like about dancing? And trying to value those wants and those desires, and just kind of knowing that dance is for you.
Yeah. Why did you dance in the first place? That love. Yeah.
And the irony is that when we embrace that and when we really dance from what we love from ourselves, like that is what is magnetic to watch. Like that's what we all want to see. Yeah, like dancers being themselves.
Thank you so much for your time and for enlightening the listeners on what you're doing, who you are, and your lived and professional experience. It's really a valuable episode. Thank you so much.
It was an honor being
Mm.
here. Thank you so much for your platform and for including us.
Oh,
Yeah.
no worries.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank
It was
you.
inspiring to speak with you. Thank you.
Oh, likewise.
Thank you all.